You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks for being here today. Follow us at StacyOnTheRight.com, at StacyOnTheRight on Twitter and Instagram, where you find all the fun, different content that we put up there. And we just appreciate having you listening to our program. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Sabine Durden. She's an angel mom. Her son, Dominic, was killed by an illegal alien. Sabine, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Stacy. It's really an honor.
So can you share with us exactly what happened to your son?
Absolutely. I'm a legal immigrant from Germany. My son and I, with his dad, divorced now, but back then came from Germany to America, and we had to go through extensive testing and all kinds of things that you do when you enter another country. We lived in California, and Dominic started working for the Sheriff's 911 Dispatch Center in Riverside. And on July 11th, 2012, he took my fiancé and myself to the airport in Ontario. We hugged, kissed, and saw each other for the very last time. Thank God I didn't know that, because on July 12th at 5:45 in the morning, while he was on his way to work, about 2 miles from the house, he was riding his motorcycle, and an illegal alien with 2 prior felonies, 2 DUIs, 1 deportation, no license, no insurance, no registration, turned his truck in front of my son and hit him so hard that it killed him instantly and threw him into a wall on the sidewalk. And thank God there were 2 Marines behind him in a car who had to witness this horrific slaughter. And one stayed with Dominic, and the other one chased the guy down because he was trying to run away.
So what has been the reaction? Because I when I was talking about you joining us today, I mentioned that, you know, stories like yours are so heartbreaking and it's so unimaginable. My husband and I, we have children, and I just, this is where you just have to kind of, like, you're trying to separate yourself, but you can't. Yeah. You can't separate yourself from this story because this is your story. This is your son. You can't get away from this. This is the reality that you live with now. Yet what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. is this, it's like there's two Americas. There's one where this matters, and then there's another America where people are elected, where stories like Dominic's don't matter.
Yes, absolutely. And the saddest part is when it happened, I didn't know when I got the call that my only child, he was my only child. He called himself German Chocolate. Mm-hmm. His dad is black, and he was German. My only child was gone. I thought it was an accident, only to find out, because another police officer whispered in my ear that I need to ask the DA, find out that the DA and the judge knew him. They had him in custody. They had him twice. And the last time he had a DUI without a license. They gave him probation. He was caught again on probation driving drunk. They gave him probation again, and then 5 weeks later he killed Dominic. And I found out it matters whether you're an illegal, because the law is not applied to you same as it would be to an American. If you or I would hit somebody, it's an accident. If we don't have a license, if we had done this before and ignored our laws, or God forbid, be in a different country, we might not ever be heard from again. And yet I find out illegals have different rights, more rights than Americans have, because the guy who killed my son received a misdemeanor without gross negligence. The judge told us he gave him a deal. He has to honor his word. And the guy served, out of 9 months and 5-year probation, he served 35 days.
Wow.
And like you said, it seems like it's a divided America, where before the left was okay with building border walls and securing our country. And all of a sudden it changed. And the hatred for our president is so loud in our faces that they would rather offer up more Americans than fixing this once and for all.
And so I want to reiterate, Sabine, you said if he had simply been in custody, for his previous crimes, he wouldn't have been out and able to commit the crime that he committed that destroyed your son's life. And so when you look at the discussion that's going on with the there's all this back and forth, and it seems like a game to some of these people in Washington, D.C., especially Nancy Pelosi. She was actually confronted by a mom who'd lost a child to, just as you have, to illegal alien crime. And she said she would pray and think about the woman. And, so her response was completely detached. It was this, she was talking about a broken teacup or something, something easily replaced.
I know the angel mom, Laura Wilkerson. She's a friend of mine. Sadly, I know way too many angel mom and dads. And that response, I listened to it. My blood was boiling. Absolutely boiling. And I was in D.C. last week. I was in her office with others. And I asked her secretary, what if I just walk through the door unannounced? You don't know who I am. You don't know my intentions. What you going to do? I'm going to start walking right now. She said, I wouldn't advise you to do that. And I know they would have called Capitol Police to arrest me.
Yeah, because you're an American citizen, and American citizens get arrested.
Exactly, because we follow the law, and it took me 6 years to become a citizen. So I take the flag. I take America at the highest value because I earned the right to be here. I didn't just drag my son through border fence and underneath a fence and through deserts and told everybody, well, I'm here now, you got to take care of me and my family. The saddest part is, Stacy, that a lot of Americans still think that it wouldn't happen to them. And I have to wake them up because, when I talk about illegal aliens, I don't care if they're from Mexico, from Guatemala, from Sweden, from Germany. They have no right to be here. So it's not a race issue because I get called Nazi and racist and Hitler's bride and whatever else they want to throw at me to shut me up, which just gives me more fire.
I know. It has to. You have to keep talking about this.
Absolutely.
Everyone needs to hear it.
Me up.
Oh, I'm glad because, you said way too many angel moms. Sometimes I'll see the stories, they kind of come through your news feed or I'll see someone being interviewed somewhere and I'll read the story. And the thread that goes through is usually the person who is killed is literally minding their own business, just doing something that any one of us could be doing.
Absolutely.
Any one of us could be driving to work or coming from work or
your family members.
Right.
We are out there and we're exposed to those who drive without a license, drunk, not paying attention. And the saddest part is a lot of times I hear, well, he could have been killed by an American. And I tell him, sure, he could have, but he wasn't. Now what?
Well, not only wasn't he, but so now statistics are showing that 10% of drunk driving in this country is done by illegal aliens. Yeah. So if you could reduce drunk driving accidents and deaths by 10% by simply sealing the border, why wouldn't we do it?
Right. And when I hear statistics of, well, illegals or they like to call them undocumented immigrants, which really makes me angry because I'm an immigrant. No, they are illegal aliens. That's the definition by law, and it's not a cuss word. It's just what it is. But I don't care if they commit 5%, 10%, 50%. We should have 0% of crime by illegal aliens because they should not be here. I don't care why they're here. I don't care what their reason is because I cannot just walk into a nice big house and sit down and say, okay, I didn't like my house, so I want to stay here now, and I want you to take care of me.
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, that's called squatting. I mean, what's funny is there's a law about all of these things. So we don't have to make anything up. We don't need new laws. We actually have laws covering all of these things.
Absolutely true. We just need to enforce them. That's all it takes. It's not really that difficult. And then close these loopholes. The birthright citizenship, it was never designed for illegals. And why would we have somebody come over illegally pregnant, pay for their prenatal, pay for their birth costs and hospital bill, and then set them up with Medicare when our own cannot afford that and don't get that privilege? We have too many American children, too many veterans that are in dire need. and we handing over about $155 billion a year because of illegal. Oh.
It's enraging. So what do you think about the most recent proposal that President Trump has put forward in an effort to open up the government? It extends, temporary status to TPS recipients and also the so-called dreamers for 3 years in exchange for the border wall funding, which I understand the urgency there. What did you think of the proposal?
Well, like you said, I understand something needs to be done, but I never like to hear the word amnesty at any point, because that word creates more caravans. It creates another, let's rush in here. Because we know that DACA, there's so much fraud as far as paperwork. And when they call them dreamers, which really is an insult because we have American dreamers that can't dream anymore, like my son. I wish he wouldn't have put that on the table, but because I'm not president, I have to wait and see what happens. And he's a brilliant man who's working it, who has done far more for us than anybody else. And I voted for the previous president because I believed that he would bring change, and he did. It was just not good for us. But this president, I've been with him. I met him. I've been in private meetings with him at the White House. He remembers. He looks at you. He means what he says, and he says what he means. So I'm praying that this is a way of getting the government running again, having our American people paid, but getting something done for the security of our country. It's just, I don't like the word amnesty. I never did.
Me either. I think it like you said, it brings more caravans, and it makes it possible for them to venue shop and get more cases where they can get people who were not a part of the original amnesty. They then go in and they try to get added to it. I mean, it's a really, I think the thing about it, Sabina, that we don't take into consideration because we don't spend all of our time trying to find ways to get around laws is that there are people who do, right?
Yes.
So they're currently sitting there waiting. Yeah, a whole group of people.
Business.
Yeah, not just the lawyers, but the people themselves are in foreign countries. And when they hear amnesty, they're like, oh, so if they do this, then we can just use this law and we can become citizens too. It's like a lottery.
Let's sneak in and say we're 15 and we're 25. And, my mama brought me over. Really, where's she at? Well, she's hiding. And, this paperwork, just bought it at the swap meet. I got 3 for $200. It's incredible the fraud that is happening with all that. So for me, with DACA, I always like to, and people look at me a little strange, I like to compare it to Disneyland when mom and dad drag their kid and sneak into Disneyland and they get busted. They don't keep the kid in there because, he's been here a couple hours, that's all he knows for right now, but we're going to kick the parents out. No, they kick all 3 of them out. And as far as them not speaking the language of their home country, most of them translate for their parents. A lot of them travel back and forth. So all these stories that we hear, why is there so much sympathy for illegals, for illegal law-breaking behavior, while we have Americans that people are shunning, that people are not listening to? Stacey, I get death threats. I get called the most horrible and vile names. The worst thing I heard one time was, I'm so glad your N son is dead because now he's skinny and white.
Wow.
That's an American telling another American about the death of their child because their concern is more for illegals. And it blows my mind because I'm doing this so nobody else has to. I have no family left. This was it.
No, I can't stand it. There's what you just shared, but there's also that it just didn't have to happen. I can't get away from that. I understand that we have people who drive drunk in our country. We have people who are criminals. We have all these things in our country. We always will have people who break the law, but we don't have to have more. That's my thing. It's like saying, well, I have a leak, so let me turn on all the faucets in my house and flood the whole house instead of just handling the leak because I have a leak in one spot, so I might as well flood the whole house. Yes. That's crazy. That doesn't make any sense.
And American criminals, sadly, have a right to be here. And we deal with them because we can find out if John Paul is really living at that address or where he was before. Whereas with Juan Soon Lopez, who killed my son, he had a different identity. He had different addresses. He didn't have a license. He lived at different places. And after a while, they given up and just let them go. And the saddest part is it took my fiancé, Anthony, and myself a year and a half to get him deported because I started to wake up. I started to get loud, and we would go to the detention center where they held him in the desert in California. And one of the ICE agents called me and said, you need to be here as often as you can because sometimes we get a note from the top to tell us to open the back door. That is some brutal information, knowing that they're overcrowded, and sometimes they let him out, crossing their fingers, well, let's hope he won't do it again.
Which we all know they
that.
do. They do, but they do go kill again. That's how Kate Steinle was killed because
Absolutely.
the guy, he was released on early release and he'd been deported a bunch of times. Yeah.
And Stacy, the guy who killed Dominic, I have a really ugly feeling in the gut in my gut because he never apologized. He told the judge, God gives life, God takes life. I was only on my way to work. That was his way of skirting the responsibility of what he's done. He was so flippant that after during the hearing, he got to bail out for $10,000 cash by a federal judge's order. And he came back. We thought he would flee. He would leave the country. He was so arrogant. He came back because, well, nothing happened to him before. He got a slap on the wrist. Don't drive. He drove. He got more probation.
Well, Sabine, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I offer my sincere condolences on the loss of your son. Thank you for the work that you're doing to prevent other parents from going through that. We'll be back with more right after this.